December 18, 1886, the Quebec Saturday Budget, Quebec, Canada. A haunted ship. Strange sounds and alleged sights in a murdered mate's cabin. The sale of the ship Squando, which was lately wrecked at Bathurst, has been postponed. It is very difficult to get men to work on her, especially at night. Queer noises were heard in the cabin of the vessel last week, which no one could explain, and the men believe the vessel haunted. There seems to be some fatality about the vessel. Not long ago, we were told of the 3 captains who had contracted a malady while in conversation in her cabin and died afterwards. It also appears that in a late voyage of the Squando, the captain became jealous of the mate's intimacy with his wife. One day, in a moment of anger at seeing them together, he attacked the mate, knocked him down, and cut his throat. It is in the cabin where the mate was murdered that they hear the extraordinary noises. Another report says, when the Squando was in San Francisco some years ago, the captain and his wife killed the first mate, severing his head completely from the body with an axe. The captain was hanged and his wife got a long sentence of imprisonment. The new captain was subsequently killed during a mutiny, and the 2 following captains died on board the vessel. It was alleged by the master and sailors who arrived at Bathurst on her that she was haunted and they left her in a body. The Norwegian council then engaged 2 watchmen to look after her, but one night on board was enough. They allege that they saw a headless man walking in the cabin, that the bedclothes were pulled off them, that handspikes were flying around the deck, and that a cold, clammy hand was laid on their faces and a voice told them to depart. And subsequent watchmen say that they saw a boat, manned by 4 men hovering around the ship, which had the power of appearing and disappearing at will. The vessel is now without a watchman, as none can be found to stay on board during the night. The Minister of Customs has ordered an investigation into the cause of the wreck. St. John, N.B., Globe. August 3, 1905, Boston Evening Transcript, Boston, Massachusetts. An Indiana Ghost. The spook of a beheaded man that haunts the spot where it departed this life, greatly to the alarm of all who behold it. From the Indianapolis Sentinel. Ranking among the seemingly impossible spirit stories of tradition and of poetry is the one that keeps the residents of the vicinity of Flaherty's Siding near LaPorte, Indiana, in constant fear and trembling. The spirit is that of a headless ghost, which haunts the old water tank by the station on the Lake Erie Railway, and which appears there nightly, enshrouded in the deepest mystery. The people of Flaherty's Siding are not afraid during the daytime, but at nightfall, after the sun sets, their voices are lowered in a strange and singular manner when they approach the little railroad station, for there is no question about the possibility, and even the certainty, of the appearance of the ghost. Headless and acting for all the world like an inanimate thing, the apparition occurs intermittently. Sometimes the elements seem to control its action, but more generally it makes its appearance with unfailing regularity, and, standing on the platform with dinner pail in hand, it swings its arms back and forth as if it were flagging an approaching train. Then it disappears and, in disappearing, frequently gives unearthly shrieks, as though suffering terrible pain. After its disappearance, its subsequent appearances that night are only a matter of chance. The people of Flaherty's Siding look upon the ghost as being surrounded with an impenetrable mystery. It is an open secret that the ghost is that of one Columbus Cole, who lost his life there in a railroad accident years ago. Cole, who was a well-known and popular resident of the vicinity of Flaherty's, was run over by an engine within a few feet of the spot where the water tank stands. In the accident, his head was completely severed from his body. At the time, it was said that the body, after being decapitated, stood erect and walked several feet from the spot, and, after emitted a terrible shriek, fell against the water tank. Shortly after Cole's untimely and terrible death, the visits of the ghost began, and they have continued with more or less regularity ever since, so that now the people have come to look at it in a matter-of-fact way. They do not deny the story. They have got beyond that point. Many interesting incidents are related of the ghost's history. Many of the people say that something is troubling the spirit, and they are anxious to know what to do to set it at rest. The generally accepted theory is that Cole wanted to do something important before he died, but that the thing which he wanted to do remains undone. Hence the spirit appears there so frequently, striving to come in contact with a sympathetic spirit clothed in worldly clay, to which it can communicate its desires. So the headless ghost has a story to tell, and its story, having never been told, has forever remained a mystery. Scores of strange and mystifying stories of the headless ghost have been told by residents of the vicinity of Flaherty's, and there is hardly a man living in that neighborhood who cannot entertain one for hours with stories of the ghost's doings. Hearing so much of the alleged headless ghost, a party of LaPorte young men went to Flaherty's sighting the other evening for the purpose of investigating the matter and verifying the ghost story. On the first night, they sat near the depot and amused themselves as best they could until daylight began to break behind the clouds in the eastern horizon. No ghost appeared that night, and they returned home doubting the ghost's existence. Their curiosity was not satisfied, and they repeated their visit the following night, when they had an entirely different experience. In telling the story, one of the boys says, "Reaching the station early in the evening, we prepared to take things easy, for we felt sure no ghost would be seen. However, we had hardly been there an hour when one of the boys raised his hand and cried, 'Hush!' We looked, and right before us, and but a short distance from the old water tank, we saw a strange apparition, a form, headless and carrying a dinner pail. It was the ghost, and not a delusion of the eyesight. It was the ghost of which we had heard so much, and, frightened as we were, we could plainly see the real, clear outline of Columbus Cole as we knew him in life, and it was even the same dinner pail that he invariably carried to and from his work. For 5 minutes or more we watched the apparition, as its arms swung back and forth as if signaling an approaching train. Presently, as if spurred on by one united impulse, we rushed to the spot where we had seen the headless figure. But upon reaching the spot, nothing but vacancy greeted us. Cole's ghost had entirely disappeared, and we stood and looked at one another in silence. But our curiosity had been satisfied, and we were no longer skeptics, but believers. Totally unstrung and ill at ease from the shock of the strange sight we had seen, which, by the way, was wholly unexpected, we walked home in silence, firm adherents of the ghost theory. And so it is that hundreds of people in the vicinity are believers in the ghost. They believe because they have seen. Seeing is believing. August 22, 1905. The Pittsburgh Press, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Haunted Tunnel, where trainmen hear agonized groans and strange noises. Persons living along the line of the Clinch Valley extension of the Norfolk and Western Railway in Southwest Virginia and across the line in Kentucky are wrought up over manifestations in Big Bull Tunnel, which is in Virginia, but not far from the Kentucky border. According to a reliable Virginian in Washington, who has recently visited that section, Norfolk and Western trainmen have recently witnessed or heard ghostly demonstrations. Persons living in the neighborhood of the tunnel have for years asserted that it was haunted. About 2 weeks ago, a train crew made a careful investigation of the tunnel, and all of them, including conductor R.H. Galloway and engineer Rube Kearns, are satisfied that there is some sort of occupant of the tunnel, and they call it a ghost. Within the last 2 years, the railroad men have heard a great deal from residents near the tunnel concerning strange sounds proceeding from the tunnel, but the gossip caused little attention. On the afternoon of July 17, a freight train in charge of conductor Galloway and engineer Kearns stopped just as the rear caboose cleared the tunnel. John Peary of Tazewell County, the flagman, hastened back into the tunnel to protect the train from collision. Peary did not stay in the hole long, and when he reached the train at the entrance, he declared he had heard sounds in there which no human being could stand. He had the appearance of a man badly scared, and Galloway and Kearns returned into the tunnel with him. When they reached the point where Peary said he had heard the sounds that had rattled him, the trio stopped. According to all three of them, they did not have to wait long to hear. The men said they never heard such groans as proceeded from the side of the tunnel, which is bricked. The voice, they say, was that of a man in anguish. The men felt chills coursing each other down their spines. Finally, Captain Galloway demanded, "What do you want?" "Remove that awful weight from my body," said the voice, which seemed to come from the solid wall of brick. It was a minute before the men could whisper a word to each other. Then the voice said, "They are drinking my blood." The trainmen could stand it no longer and hurried back to their train. After examining the walls of the tunnel, because the thought also came to them that some wag had found a hiding place and was playing a practical joke, there was not a break in the brick which lined the sides and the top of the tunnel. 3 men have lost their lives in this tunnel. Captain Judd Hall, who assisted in arching the tunnel about 2 years ago, maintains that it is haunted, or at least that sounds may be heard in the tunnel which are not susceptible of explanation. A number of trainmen are making arrangements to investigate the story further. The story that the 3 trainmen relate is generally credited. Washington County, Baltimore Sun.